Thank you very much to Ubisoft for sending over a code to be able to cover the game and make this review. I very much appreciate it. Prince of Persia has been lying dormant as a franchise for a few years now, and with the constant rumours about the remaster of Sands of Time circulating and not much happening outside of that, in steps Ubisoft Montpellier with Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, taking the game back to its roots from 35 years ago and way before this guy was born. Can the Rayman Legends developer inject life into the series, or is it really doomed to the sands of time forever? Let's find out. The Lost Crown begins with an action-packed opening which introduces us to the Immortals and our lovable protagonist, Sargon. Each one of the Immortals has a unique thing that they are good at. In this case, Sargon has the ability to have crazy agility and dual-wielding swords. As the story progresses, we are led to Mount Koth, which is the main set piece for the entire game. You come to find out the mountain is cursed and stuck within time, causing some interesting conversations to happen between characters. The story is presented in a few different ways, but the majority is through this visual novel pop-up text style between characters that have their own specific character art. There is also a few cutscenes that are in this sketch art style that are sprinkled throughout, and then there's also the in-game cutscenes. These cutscenes do have a little bit of jank with them in terms of like how the model lip sync kind of plays with their dialogue, but it doesn't necessarily detract from the overall experience. I started to notice it towards the end of the game, so yeah, maybe that'll be addressed in the day one patch as I am recording this video, so it may not be a problem for you. The story, I will have to say, is the weakest of all the elements in this game. It has some compelling moments though, the boss fights, which are particularly enjoyable, action-packed, fast-paced, and are filled with style. Massive props to the design, animation, and gameplay teams because they were cooking with rocket fuel when they made these cutscenes. The voice acting from start to finish was also top-notch, and the entire cast of characters have their own individual personalities that don't feel out of place within this world that Montpellier have created. I particularly enjoyed Sargon's performance as he has to kind of carry the game, and I really did enjoy it. These compelling moments, however, are littered throughout the game. A lot of the time the story is spent with these text boxes and the character voices as you go through. It isn't bad by any means, but it is serviceable to the top-notch gameplay and level design on offer. There isn't a full explanation of how time works within the game either. It is alluded to, but not elaborated on. Plus, there's some supernatural elements, like they kind of wave it off, and I kind of just go, it's magic, but no one knows how it works. That type of deal. But it's not bad. It's 100% serviceable for the rest of the game, and I enjoyed my time with it. There's not really else much to say. Combat, however, in The Lost Crown has this natural flow to it that starts off slow and simple and quite snappy, but as the game progresses, you add more tools and things start to feel more like a fighting game, and you're putting together all these crazy combos that the player can explore. Naturally, you go through the game with the simple 3-button combo that a lot of these games have, or you can get to the point where you're hitting 4 to 7 button combos and enemies are helpless at fighting back. You have access to dual-wielded swords, a bow, and eventually you have a chakram, which is another form of ranged attack, which you can also parry it multiple times to be able to continually do damage to enemies. Kind of a like form of deadly boomerang. The real skill is keeping a majority of enemies in the air so they can't attack you back. They're usually just helpless when you do this. There's also a neat weight system in the game, so every time you go up against certain enemies, if they're big, clunky, heavy enemies, they can't be knocked down and they can't be kicked into the air, which creates an interesting problem. The solution to this problem comes in the form of parrying and dodging. Dodging is mainly used to get rid of red attacks, which are these unblockable attacks, which for most games it's just kind of normal, but the game actually really takes a shine with the parry system. There are regular parries and opportunity parries. Regular parries block regular attacks and can be used against different projectiles that aren't red and unblockable, but opportunity parries are where this game can save you at times. Enemies will glow with a yellow light as they are beginning a certain attack. You parry it and you get an awesome stylish finisher, and most of the smaller enemies in the game you can do this to. At least about 70% of them you'll kill in one hit, or you get a really cool high damaging attack either in a boss fight or against some harder enemies. These are awesome. So now you have the solutions to those problems. There's going to be over 65 different enemies that you can go up against throughout the course of the game. So lots of ways to promote challenge for the player, and also I got my ass beat a couple of times from just some regular enemies. So yeah, this game is no joke. Even with the 5 difficulty settings, I played on the normal difficulty and this game still kicked my ass at times. So if you want to go to the ultra hard difficulty mode, then by all means go right ahead. I had a fantastic time on the normal difficulty and I recommend that you use that when you play the game. Not only do we have all of this, Lost Crown elevates its combat through the use of surges and time powers. There are 6 total time powers within the game that you get through certain story beats. Some are better for like traversal, but some can be incorporated into combat, and it adds a brand new layer to every fight when used in the right way. Take for example the Shadow of the Simurgh. This allows you to create a clone or like a mark of yourself in time where you previously were. Then you can press the button again to teleport back to that specific spot. It's very good when you're going through tricky areas of platforming, and is really great against bosses that have some unavoidable attacks that cover the like bottom layer of the screen, or you need to get around rather quickly. This also extends to the Dimensional Claw, which allows you to do one thing in 2 different ways. The claw allows you to take an object. Most of the time it's going to be an explosive or a whole enemy that is going to cause you some problems. Most of the objects you can throw out at things, but then when you throw out an enemy, they will be on your side for a brief period of time. If you then attack them, they will obviously start attacking you back, but you can use this to make things a little bit more manageable in certain tough areas. Surges are one of my personal favorite things to use, and they are a key part of your overall combat experience. You build up your power bar in the bottom right hand corner, and surges are essentially special anime moves that you can use to attack enemies, whether that's like a ranged wave, an upward attack, which are like level 1. Then you go into like level 2 where you have a defensive one and a healing one, or like a bow attack that you can use. And then you go into like a level 3 surge, which is you build up all the bar. You get this amazing multiple attack ultimate thing, which just looks incredible. Every single surge that I used in the game is just crazy in terms of animation and also presentation. All of these combat elements add together to play into something I call the combat flow. Parrying, attacking, using surges to deal some damage, dodging, then combining your time powers together. It's unbelievably tight, it's unbelievably snappy, and it's unbelievably fun. It gives the player creative freedom to experiment, finding their own combos and finding out what was the most rewarding. Or you can just press the attack button 3 times instead if that's what you like doing. The combat flow culminates into a big crescendo in the game, which is the boss fights, because oh man, are these awesome. They are this awesome blend of getting attacks in when you can, timing parries to build up your surge meter, dodging unblockable attacks, and hitting specific parries to trigger a crazy anime cinematic move which does super damage to the boss. Over the course of the game, you'll go up against 9 main bosses, and there's also a few mini bosses that are littered throughout. There's a really cool one where you end up actually fighting yourself quite early on, and then they kind of escalate this fight that you have with yourself later on in the game. But I won't talk too much about that because I don't want to spoil it for you. There was one boss that I ran into which caused me a particular amount of trouble on the regular difficulty. Every single boss is 100% learnable. Let me tell you, whenever you nail a boss fight where you don't get hit, you feel untouchable, it's literally the most rewarding feeling in this game. You may be thinking, Jimbo, isn't that normal for most bosses in most games? But let me tell you, these bosses are just as badass as you. If you get caught with certain unblockable attacks, it's not a simple, oh, here's some health gone. No, you get hit with like anime attacks, these crazy like cinematic set pieces of you getting ground pounded into the floor or getting cut into 1,000 pieces. It like is amazing, and it just, even if you get caught by one of these during a fight, you kind of just have to sit there and go, well, this is just cool. I'm getting my ass beat, but it's still cool, right? It means even if you mess up during a fight, the devs took time to make each boss memorable and just as cool as every other aspect that you are doing. And it also made me think a lot of the time, if I don't get hit by this attack and I'm not perfect, then I'm gonna end up messing up, which means I'm gonna have to sit through that cutscene of this guy beating my ass repeatedly. So yeah, I've said beating my ass quite a lot. Hopefully this isn't a thing. After going up against so many different bosses in so many different games, I can appreciate this a little bit more, this little added spice, because it just means that the boss is throwing out randomness. Like, you can predict when these attacks are coming, and if you dodge them, it feels just as good. Combine that with each of the bosses having an escalation mechanic, which essentially, when you take down a chunk of their health bar, they get new attacks, or like a new mode that they go into that increases the intensity. It's all incredibly enjoyable. I do also like that the game kind of scales with you when you get new traversal mechanics or new skills that you use. Bosses will have these things either to take into consideration during the fight, or it kind of gives little hints to the player to go, okay, use this time power to stay in one spot while the attack's happening, and then dodge there to avoid another unblockable attack. There's a really nice flow to how the progression goes on in the game, and I think that the boss fights sit among some of my favorite aspects of this game. I love them. We've looked at story, we've looked at gameplay. Now it's time to take a look at level design. Seeing as Ubisoft Montpellier made Rayman Legends, they are known for making good platforming. They are really bringing their A game here and taking it to a whole nother level. Every biome in the game offers a unique challenge to the player's skill set and has secrets locked away for future revisits, because obviously this game is a Metroidvainia. Each of the biomes has like a unique loop mechanic, so when you get more traversal abilities, you can kind of loop back on yourself and be able to get to areas that you didn't think were possible. And then on top of that, it isn't just new areas that you unlock or like a different style of palette every time you go into a new biome or revisit another area. The game steps it up at every single point throughout the playthrough, starting simple and easy in the platforming of the lower city, and then you get into the incredible areas such as the Pit of the Eternal Souls and the upper city area. Each of the biomes is a nice mix, and it doesn't keep things the same, and I really enjoyed that. Platforming has a really great rhythm to it, and when you get into that flow, areas become really fun to navigate. You spend about 80 to 90% of your time navigating and platforming through the game, so if it didn't feel good, I'd have something to complain about, but here it just feels amazing. The game continually surprised me every single time I added something new to my moveset. Never have I ever been more excited to get a dash and a double jump in a game before. While that may seem a little bit silly, the game is designed around the earlier sections, you not having these things, and then more of it opens up to explore once you get them in your arsenal. Speaking of upgrades and materials, a lot of what you're exploring throughout the game will give you time crystals, you'll find amulets, collectibles, and also other quests around the game as well. So it's not just, oh, I can jump through this area quicker now. It gives you things to explore and things to help you progress. The amulets can give you additional things in combat, such as extra surge build-up, extra defense, or even some more attack power. And these can also be upgraded as well from the vendor at the Haven, this massive god that basically forges things for you. Another really cool feature is having the ability to go and look at markers that you've set for yourself to leave for chests around the world, so you can go back and revisit them later. A lot of these materials as well are hidden away in some really tough platforming sections that require a combination of all the tools that you have available, but when you pull it off, It's one of the coolest feelings, and you'll feel great when you do it, but likewise, you'll equally get annoyed with how many times that you mess up. I totally didn't do that. I was perfect, guys. Something I don't generally talk about in my reviews are the art style and direction in depth. I kind of just say, look, game looks good, guys. That's good. But the Lost Crown wears its anime influences on its sleeve and then some. Every surge attack that you have, it feels like you are Naruto or Goku performing a finishing move. The opportunity parries when you catch one is essentially the Fist of the North Star, like Omewa no Shinderu moment that is just hype as hell. And this happens not just in combat, but during the cutscenes as well, and in the bosses. One of the bosses literally cuts you 1,000 times and then finishes the attack with the trademark, I'm going to look at the floor and hold my sword in a really cool way while everything is happening behind me. There was a few genuine moments, and especially one during the final act of the game, where I shouted, "That's Goku!" while jumping around in my chair. As an anime fan, you see this a lot, and as a video game fan, you don't see this as often as I'd like, so smashing them together is really damn good. And I loved every single time that they did it, and it never really got old. Throw in an incredible soundtrack that has this classical blend and also some kind of dance vibes to it as well. I don't really know how to describe sound in words. It's not really how you do it, but you have a game that is filled to the brim with style on top of style. Something I forgot to mention during the writing of this review, the specs on this game are mind-blowing. On Nintendo Switch and previous gen consoles, you're going to be able to get 1080p 60 FPS, and then also on the PlayStation 4 Pro and the Xbox One X, 4K 60 FPS. And then on the day one patch for Xbox Series and PlayStation 5, on the S, you're going to be able to get 1440p at 60 FPS. And on the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X, 4K 120 FPS. And this game runs like butter. It's smooth. It ran perfectly. No stuttering, no lag or anything like that. No hang-ups at any point, and every area was just seamlessly loaded. They've done some technical wizardry because the last two Ubisoft games that came out are really well optimized, and we're getting 4K 120 FPS on regular consoles, and then on PC you're going to be able to do probably even higher than that. So yeah, take with that what you will. I'm not one to bark on about how well a game performs and like the graphics and frame rate, but here is an especially good mention. Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown is the perfect example of giving a studio license to flex their talent at making a great game on a bigger budget, and with a franchise that was in desperate need of a revitalization and that little hangover until we get the Sands of Time remake. The game can easily swing with some of the best titles in the Metroidvainia genre. I will go as far to say that this game will be nominated for multiple awards at the end of the year, and I think it will win a few as well, maybe even getting a Game of the Year nod. I think the game is that good. I love my time with the game. I love the art style, the level design, the progression systems, the combat especially, and also the cinematic anime-ness of everything. And it was wild that I looked back at the time I spent on the game, and I clocked it in at around 22 hours, and that isn't even trying to 100% everything. And I can honestly say it went by very, very quickly. I loved Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, and I highly recommend you play it. And if you are sitting on the fence, you can play this game right now for free as a demo, and it gives you 40 minutes of content. It's on the store, and you can see if it's worth your purchase that way. And on top of that, I think it's like £40 in the UK or like 50 in America for dollars. So I think it's a pretty good price point for jumping into a game like this. I want to say a massive thank you once again for Ubisoft being able to allow me to review the game early and get this out just before the release date of the game. And also, thank you for watching the video of my first new game review of the year. Believe me, I am one happy chappy. I love this game. And if you did enjoy this video, please leave a like on it. Subscribe if you're new for more content like this. And as always, this has been It's Jimbo, and I'll see you guys next time.